When you're talking positioning, Don, are you talking positioning almost like the blue ocean strategy positioning, or do you have a different way of looking at positioning?
Well, Blue Ocean that's a great book and a great thought. Mine is my positioning. When I think about positioning, I literally think about the words that you use to position yourself in the market. And there's a formula that I use to go through that. So building a story brand, probably the reason I'm on your podcast, and we could probably talk for 2 weeks straight, Patrick, but the reason I'm here is to talk about positioning and what that looks like. We help people clarify their message, and we do that using the elements of story, the ancient story structure that existed before Aristotle, but Aristotle was the first to write about it in a book called Poetics. And so it's 2,500 years old. I mean, some adaptation of this story structure. The reason I like story in order to captivate an audience is because the average human brain spends about 30% of its time daydreaming, 30% of its time. That's actually a survival mechanism. It's your brain saying there's nothing that I'm encountering right now that can help me survive. So we're going to take a break and I'll check back in with reality later when I think my brain needs to help me survive. Except when you're watching a movie. If you're watching a movie or reading a book or watching a television series, your brain will not daydream. It will actually pay attention for 90 minutes, 2 hours, a whole weekend. It is the only tool on the planet that can get somebody to pay attention. It's fascinating. So it's worth studying, I think, story and how it works, because every little plot point that we study actually gives us a fascinating business paradigm shift that we can use to make more money in our company. So let me go through the formula for you and just give you a flyover version of what it is. In every story, first of all, stories are very formulaic, and a lot of people don't know that. But there are basically about 35 plot points that happen in a story. There are only 7 stories that ever get told in the theater. If you know what those stories are, you know where the movie's going. My wife hates going to the movies with me because I elbow her and say, that guy dies in 31 minutes. He normally does. They're just formulaic. The beautiful thing is, what that means is over the 2,500 years, story specialists have figured out how to captivate an audience's attention. So one of the hardest things for us to do as small business owners is get people's attention and keep it. So let's look at how a story works and see how it can help us. The very first thing that happens in a story, I'm going to go through 7 critical plot points that happen in every single movie that you'll go see. The first is a character. You have a character who shows up on screen. And what you've got to do as a screenwriter is you've got to figure out what that character wants, because that defines the story. The character has to want to disarm the bomb. The character has to want to win the championship. The character has to want to marry the girl. It has to be really specific. So there are 2 mistakes that amateur screenwriters make, and they're the same mistakes that business leaders make. The first is they are too vague in defining what it is that their customer wants. So if Patrick, if I said, hey, let's skip the rest of this interview, there's a movie down the street, it's about a guy looking for fulfillment. Is that interesting to you at all?
Not at all.
Not at all. Okay, let me tempt you a little bit better. Patrick, let's skip this interview. There's a movie down the street. Another of Liam Neeson's daughters has been kidnapped. Is that more tempting or less?
More tempting. More tempting.
Well, the reason is it's clear. And so if we are elusive or vague, we can't captivate somebody's attention. And here's what I mean by that. You know, I study websites for a living. If I go to your website and you have something like trust is the commodity we exchange, you're not going to sell anything because it's so vague. It doesn't say what you offer. It doesn't tell me what problem you solve. We've got to know. So it can't be vague or elusive. The other problem is we will define too many things that the customer wants. We want to put all 27 of our revenue streams up on the main page. But if I took you to a movie, if we went to a movie and Jason Bourne wanted to know who he really was, he wanted to lose 30 pounds, he wanted to run a marathon, he wanted to marry the girl, he's thinking about adopting a cat, I've put too many plot points in that movie and I'm going to lose the audience. It's just not going to work. So we have to define something the customer wants. The next thing we have to do is our hero in the story has to have a problem. There has to be something that is challenging them. In fact, a story without a problem can't hook the audience. If I said, a buddy of mine wanted to play, or was in LA, and he got a call from some friends, and they said, come down to the beach, we're playing volleyball. And he walked down to the beach, and there were all his best friends. They started playing volleyball, and the game ended in a tie. And then one of them said, I'm hungry, and said, there's some tacos across the street, and the tacos happened to be on sale. How long can I go into this story without boring you? What's going to happen is very quickly, if we don't have a problem, the audience is going to begin to daydream. And that's what's happening with most of us in our businesses. Here's the business paradigm shift there. If you're not talking about your customers' problems, you are not selling anything, and your business is not going to grow. The only reason your customer is going to your website or calling your sales rep back or walking into your retail establishment is because they are trying to solve a problem. When you make it very clear what problem you solve, you attract customers. In fact, I say to salespeople all the time, you're not actually trying to sell anything. What you're trying to do is you're trying to connect this product to a problem that your customer has. And when the synapses fire and they see this product as the resolution to the problem, that is when they are going to buy it. So you've got to figure out what that problem is. You've got to talk about it. You've got to say this is a painful problem and nobody should have to deal with this. Therefore, you should buy this product. And when you do that, you're actually going to sell a lot more product. So we've got to have the problem next. The third element is the guide, G-U-I-D-E. When we represent our business or our product, we want you to play the guide in the story. Don't play the hero. You play the hero in your personal life. But when you're representing a brand or you're selling a product, you play the guide. And what does the guide do? The guide helps the hero win the day. So if you're not listening to anything else on this podcast, hear me say this. Never play the hero in the story. Always play the guide when it comes to representing your brand. What does that mean? Well, when you play the hero in the story, first of all, if you say, Don, tell me about your business, I say, well, we're trying to make 15 million this year, and we're trying to increase our great places to work metric, and we want to have our fourth quarter revenue be double what it was last year. What you hear me saying is that I'm a hero in a story. Well, if I'm a hero in a story and you're a hero in a story, we're in separate stories. So the second we play the hero in the story, we remove ourselves from our customer's story.
That's so powerful what you just said. Can you say that one more time? That was so powerful. I hope I don't mean to interrupt. I just want to make sure they cut what you just said right there.
When you play the hero in the story, you remove yourself from your customer's story. Your customer is walking to the room saying, I need a guide to help me solve a problem and win the day. And when they recognize that you're the hero, they go, okay, well, you're a hero and I'm a hero. Nice to meet you. Would you move out of the way? I'm looking for a guide who can help me.